Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on Encore, coming up on today's music show.
Gotta be home soon. I gotta get home, so let's not go too far.
Paul Kelly is Australia's bard of song, a prolific storyteller whose tales have spun over 350 songs and 23 albums across 4 decades of music that hits at the heart of what it means to be Australian. Paul Kelly joins me in the studio during a Paris stopover on his Life is Fine album tour. Paul Kelly, thank you very much for joining us here on Encore. We have to start with a big congratulations to you. At 62 years of age, you've landed your first career #1 spot on the Australian album charts, leaving the likes of Pink, Ed Sheeran in the dust. There's hope for music yet. Now, professionally speaking, at least, Paul, it seems that life is more than fine right now, would you say?
Yes, it's good. We've got an album that we're travelling around, just started a long tour. And it's a fun record to play. It's pretty playful, it's upbeat. It's the first time I've toured with the whole band overseas for about 15 years. I've been often travelled over, but more as solo or as a duo, but took the whole gang this time with singers on the record, Vika and Linda, who also, as well as singing harmony, take lead on a couple of songs. So we've just been out and about for a week in UK and Ireland, and we're heading to across some other countries and then off to the States. So we're off to a good start. Everyone's very happy and also very excited to be in Paris.
Fantastic. Sounds exciting. Well, we're going to take a trip down memory lane now.
Welcome strangers to the show. I'm the one who should be lying low, so the knives out, turn my back, heard the train coming, stayed right on that track in the middle before too long. The one that you're loving, wish that he never met you. I got so hot, I had to cry. You were there, you held the line. You're the one that brought me back. For a second, I'll pretend that I can start today again.
Such an incredible body of work, an Australian legend you are, Paul Kelly. Now, in recent years, your work has touched on funeral songs, Shakespearean sonnets. Do you think that one of the reasons why this album in particular has struck a chord is because it's you really going back to the basics, back to classic Paul Kelly sound?
Yeah, I think, I've been going down these various, I guess, like side paths, apart from the funeral songs and the Shakespeare sonnets. I did a record before that of 6 different singers singing my songs. Before that was more of a pastoral song cycle, fairly acoustic. But this is back to the full band. It's
Did you miss it as much as you've said that your label did? Your label were aching for a classic Paul Kelly album. Were you also?
Not so much. I mean, I would still do tours from time to time, and some of those tours with the full band. So I was still getting my dose of loud noise. But I was very aware that these few records over the last few years, that it was time to come up with something. I wanted to come out with a record in stark contrast, especially to the 2 records of last year, which were quite philosophical and meditative. So I had been storing songs up, just putting them aside. I tend to sort of write songs and just sort them into little piles, and then when I've got enough of a particular kind of song, I can see where the record's going to go. But we're always going to come out with a full band record this time.
Now, in terms of the direction of the record, a poem, Life is Fine by Langston Hughes, really set the wheels in motion for this album. What drew you to that poem?
A friend of mine sent it to me a couple of years ago and just said, do you think you could write music to that? And the poem, it's by Langston Hughes, American poet, reads just like a song. It even sort of seems to fall into verses and choruses, and it rhymes, so it was quite simple to put to music.
Did you feel that's where you were at in terms of your own life? That life is fine, you're kind of in the golden years?
Oh, well, the poem's a bit more ambiguous than that. In fact, it's a poem about suicide, but the narrator in the end decides to choose life. So it's one of those darkly comic songs, but it ends with a burst of joy. So I thought it was a good touchstone and a good pointer to the rest of the record, which has got some comedy in it, and it's shades of light and dark. And it's also a good example of how the other work I've done in other years of, you know, putting poems to music has bled into this. So I now put poems to music just for fun every now and then.
Light and dark, and a lot of warmth in this album too. It's very upbeat. It's time for a taste of Life is Fine. Let's join Paul in the kitchen for firewood and candles.
Oh, she knows I love her. Below and above her and a whole lot firewood and candle. Firewood and candle.
Darkly comic there. Are you as handy in the kitchen as you look, Paul? You look a little bit dangerous actually in the kitchen with that knife
Yeah,
there.
I'm a pretty regular cook. I like cooking.
What's your signature dish?
With, probably broccoli pasta. It's the dish I always cook when I come home from tour is broccoli pasta with garlic and anchovies and chilli.
Ooh, that sounds good. Let's stay at home. I hear your children help introduce you to new music. Is that true?
Yes, they do. I've got 3 children, one in his 30s and 2 in their 20s, and they all play music and perform music.
And what's on their radar right now? What have they been slipping in front of your nose?
My daughters have a band called Satsuma, and they've just made their first record, and it's more electronic pop, so they're always slipping me little mix CDs of various electro music. And same with my son, Declan, he's also leans more that way.
Well, let's see if we can add some new music to your list. It's time now for our music news of the week, starting with new songs from your fellow countrymen, Paul, Angus and Julia Stone, who you've collaborated with in the past. The Australian brother-sister duo's 4th album, Snow, was recorded and self-produced by the pair on Angus's remote farm in Byron Bay. That's in the hippie hinterlands of Australia's southeast coast. Now, the pair will support Snow with a tour across Australia, Europe and North America. That's later this year. Let's take a look at Chateau. Well, Paul, as a socially conscious artist, I'd love to see you 1 year back here in France at the Fête de l'Humanité Festival. We're throwing the spotlight on the 82nd edition. It's taking place this weekend just outside of Paris. The historic annual event brings together music, literature, gastronomy and politics under the banner of justice, liberty and peace. Some of the highlights and headliners this year include Iggy Pop and French metal band Gojira. Now, in terms of musical activism, Paul, Australian Indigenous land rights is a struggle particularly close to your heart. Can you explain?
Well, I grew up not learning much about Aboriginal history, so I guess when I started travelling around, I started getting curious and started finding out things for myself, and that sort of slipped into my songs, telling stories of various events over the years that have been important in the land rights struggle.
Well, thank you very much, Paul, for sharing your story with us. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Life is Fine is out now. Check it out and catch Paul Kelly on tour with dates across Europe, America, Canada and Australia. You can connect with Encore online and on social media. We'll leave you with one of the most contagious cuts of the album, My Man's Got a Cold.
It's rusty and it's rough. He's off his wine and bread. He even said no to head. My man's got it bad, like nobody else has ever had.